From 12 News, this is Newsmakers.
An historic election night for Rhode Island.
Thank you for the honor of representing you in Congress, and thank you to Rhode Island for putting your trust in me. I won't let you down.
Voters in the 1st Congressional District overwhelmingly picked Democrat Gabe Amo as their new representative in the U.S. House. Amo will become the first person of color to serve Rhode Islanders in Congress. Voter turnout was higher than expected for a special off-year election, driven in no small part by a series of bond questions, including one that went down in flames in North Kingstown. This week on Newsmakers, what you need to know about Tuesday's election here and nationwide with our political roundtable. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White alongside 12 News politics editor Ted Nesi. Joining us this week on a political roundtable, 12 News political analyst Joe Fleming, and we welcome back political strategist Cara Cromwell. We made it, everyone. Election day, we are here. Yep. The final, probably, political roundtable of the season. It's good to have you. Let's start with...
And then next week we'll do the first 2024 political roundtable.
Bite your tongue, Nesi. Let's bring up the results from the 1st congressional race, and we're going to start our conversation with that. The winner, of course, Democrat Gabe Amo, with a resounding 65% of the vote. Gary Leonard, the Republican, with 35% of the vote, which tracks with conventional wisdom. That's about what Republicans can get, particularly in CD1. I think it was roughly 66,000 votes cast in the 1st congressional district. Let's go around the table here, and Ted, I'll start with you. What stood out to you most about Tuesday's election?
Well, there's a lot of different things, but the thing that I keep thinking about is the consistency of the vote in this unusual special election with a first-time candidate on both sides of the ballot with previous elections. So the margin was about a 30-point victory for Gabe Amo here over Gary Leonard. What was the margin for Joe Biden over Donald Trump in CD1 in 2020? 29 points.
Good guess.
Exactly. And what did David Cicilline get last in his final re-election race? I think it was like up 28 points. So just this was, even though the turnout was lower and it was an unusual timing, in the end it was sort of like you just shrunk the electorate and got the same kind of swath of voters on both sides.
All right, so I do want to go around and see what stood out to you, but you bring up the question, is that the Republican ceiling in CD1?
It tends to be the Republican ceiling. The district is so Democratic at this point. Look at the city of Providence. Normally a Democrat would get about 80% of the vote in Providence. Gabe Amo got 90% of the vote. In a couple of precincts, he got 93, 94% of the vote. And I think what's happening is the Republicans have no base at all in CD1. Years ago they did. Right now, that's going away. And they can't say, well, I'm going to win this district. Well, they won three towns, but by 52%, 55%, where Democrats are running up 70%, 74%, 90%. How do you counter that in CD1?
You're sort of the state's political historian, so I do want to talk about the difference in a moment between now and, as you alluded to then. But before we get to that, Cara, what stood out to you?
You know, I agree with both what Ted and Joe said, in that there's a ceiling and a floor. I'll also say that I thought the campaign was reasonably positive. Not necessarily the result, but I thought that was about issues. And I think that maybe shows the line in the district between Republican issues and Democrat issues. And I think that the voters came out on their issues and voted that way.
That's a very good point. I mean, effectively, and it's no disparagement of either candidate, you had a fairly generic Democrat in Gabe Amo, mainstream, worked for Joe Biden, campaigning on healthcare and Social Security and abortion rights and et cetera. And Gary Leonard, a fairly traditional New England Republican, talking about bipartisanship, trying to have some distance with the National Party, et cetera. And that this district falls to 65-35 in that environment.
Yeah, but everything is sort of relative, and I think it felt a little bit more, I guess, polite relative to the primary. And why? Because in a general election, there are very clear differences in policy. So in a primary, you have to attack character, right? And so I think the primary felt more negative.
And in the primary, you're going to need all the other voters who are with the other opponents to be with you in the general. So you don't want to say too much that has base Democratic voters mad at you if you're Gabe Amo. I think a lot of Gabe Amo ran a very good campaign and had a bunch of breaks, which is a great combination if you're running in politics.
But also Gary Leonard was lacking resources. There was no one from outside coming in to give him a couple $100,000 to get on the TV. A lot of people just did not know him. So people who say, well, there's an election, I'm going to vote, they're voting the regular way, and that's Democratic in the first CD.
And I think with both of them being newcomers, neither one of them had a record. So it's hard to attack what people are putting out about yourself. I mean, you didn't have any mud slinging because there wasn't a lot of mud to find.
Well,
whereas
and
the
Amo
CD1
didn't need to mudsling.
No, the
Obviously,
CD1 race that Cara ran for Republican John Laughlin in 2010. I mean, we do forget CD1's been Democratic for a long time, but John Laughlin only lost to David Cicilline by 6 points. Was it Cara in 2010?
Yeah.
He's the closest, right, to anyone that challenged David Cicilline.
Absolutely,
Yep.
and that was his first. That was the first time Cicilline ran.
City Hall baggage.
City Hall baggage. Also, a terrible political environment nationally for Democrats.
Right.
Still coming out of the Great Recession. Obama wasn't popular, et cetera. Gabe Amo had more of a tailwind here because Joe Biden's poll numbers aside, we saw it was a good night nationwide for Democrats the other night. And you know, Gary Leonard, he's trying to talk about bipartisanship and lowering the temperature in Washington. Meanwhile, the caucus he was trying to join spent most of the fall campaign here with no speaker at each other's throats, putting Mike Johnson in place. So that stuff matters, too. If Gabe Amo was facing a lot of negative stuff coming up for Democrats, maybe he would have faced some other questions. But
And we haven't said the T word yet, but that was Trump.
Thank you. I didn't know where you were going.
Sorry.
there's a few of those.
No, I think that was probably a bit of an anchor around Gary Leonard's neck, regardless, because traditional Republicans.
I mean, he tried to sidestep that issue.
It's hard to sidestep, though, when your base is asking, "Are you with our president?" and anybody else who you're maybe trying to draw in is asking, "Are you with that former president?"
Was anybody else surprised by turnout? And I think I said it was like roughly 66,000, right, in the first congressional district?
About 19-20%.
Yeah.
Okay, now that's depressingly low. You would like to see a much higher turnout than that, but special election, off-year election. Joe, were you surprised by that turnout?
I was a little surprised, but then I started to look. Some of these school bond issues, I think that drew voters up. Barrington, especially Middletown. The numbers were pretty high in Middletown because the bond was getting them out. So that might have drew an extra 5,000-6,000 voters out. So, I mean, 20% still is not a great turnout at all when you got 341,000 registered voters in the district and only 66,000 come out.
So, Joe, we sort of touched on it briefly. It was not ancient history the last time a Republican was winning and winning easily in a congressional race in CD1, 1992, Ron Makeley. Just lay it on the table. How much has the district changed for Republicans in the last 30 years?
Okay, it's changed quite a bit. Back in those days, Barrington, very Republican community. Little Compton, Middletown, Portsmouth, Lincoln, and there's other communities that the Republicans could count on to build up some votes to counter the city of Providence and Pawtucket. Now they don't have that anymore. So, if you're lucky, you might break even in those communities. That's not enough to win the first CD when you're trying to go against the strong Democratic areas who have a lot more voters than you. Gary won North Smithfield, 52%. Woonsocket, 52%. I think North Smithfield is 55%. Again, they're victories, but they're small victories. In CD1, you have to have a lot of big victories.
Just to build on what Joe's saying with those numbers. So I looked at this the other day. Gary Leonard wins North Smithfield, his best community, nets 500 more votes there than Gabe Amo. Gabe Amo wins Providence, nets almost 6,000 more votes than Gary Leonard.
6,000 is larger than 500.
Yeah, by quite a few. Neither of us were math majors, but and that's and we can become too used to that and say, well, yeah, of course Democrats win big in Providence, but that becomes the ball game. If every major city gives a Democratic candidate a landslide, the Republicans can't make up for that in places like North Smithfield. There's just not enough voters.
So, Cara, what's changed? Did the geography change, or did the Republican Party change to those that used to kind of lean to the right? What has made the difference in the last 3 decades?
I mean, I do think the Republican Party has changed, and if you think about who was the head we'll go back to 92, right? You have President Bush, who was the first President Bush. Kinder, gentler kind of president. And now you have Donald Trump, who I think stirs a lot of anger in people. And I think, a lot of people don't want to be part of something that's just not kind. I think there's a value there. So they're not joining the Republican Party, even if they might have be more conservative fiscally or socially. They might just be staying out of party politics and either voting for more conservative Democrats or just staying out of politics entirely.
You think of a place like Barrington. I mean, Democrats, in a way, have moderated their message. That it's gone from we won't raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $250,000 to we won't raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000. Well, you're now capturing a lot of the upper middle class households in wealthier districts like Barrington. Not everyone by any means, but that also makes a difference. Whereas if Gabe Amo was campaigning on raising, every middle class voter's taxes, you probably have some different results in these places.
And I just think it's hard for people to be part of something that is so negative nationally.
Joe, thoughts?
I was just going to say very quickly, a lot of times the Democrats got these communities back by doing it at the grassroots level. They got the council. In Barrington, for example, the Senate used to always be Republican. Then it became Democratic. So, and the same thing with the House seats. So, I mean, they started at the ground level. The Republicans have to do the same thing. Find communities in CD1 where they can get a message out there that they will be the best choice in their town.
I want to defend Rhode Island's Republicans, who I talk to a lot, who are elected. The challenge for them is I just don't think there's much way for Rhode Island Republicans, I think of Brian Newberry in the legislature, Steve Fry as the national committeeman. How can they overcome the level of noise and publicity that the national party? When you turn on the nightly news, you see Donald Trump. You're going to hear about Mike Johnson's positions on abortion. It's very hard for a much lesser known local Republican to really brand something differently unless you have as big a megaphone as like a Charlie Baker did in Massachusetts, who was the governor. But they don't have anyone.
Well, do you have to rebuke that message, just full throat, as opposed to Gary Leonard sidestepping Trump? Would it have been smarter for him to say, I am not voting? Just come out and say, I'm not voting for Donald Trump.
Just like Charlie Baker did. He was an early never Trump.
But Baker was already in office, in fairness.
Yeah, no, I think that's true.
And
but
wildly popular.
But I think that the mistake in Rhode Island is that they're trying to do both. They're trying to continue to hold the Republican base, and then it's hard to grow beyond that.
Okay, we have just a few more minutes before we have to go to break, but I want to pivot back to Congressman-elect Amo. Let's hear from him briefly. Ted, you met up with him after Joe had called the race for Gabe Amo, and here's what he had to say.
I believed that Rhode Islanders were ready to elect someone who had the experience of working for two presidents and a governor, but also was rooted in this community, rooted right here in Pawtucket, and came from humble roots.
That's Congressman-elect Gabe Amo with Ted Nesi on election night, and he had just gotten a call from President Biden.
Yeah, just shortly before he talked to me at the top of the 10 o'clock news, and he talked to Biden in the green room a few minutes before. The White House loves this, right? They say, our guy who did not put distance between himself and Joe Biden, and we're hearing all the time about Joe Biden's poll numbers, he won emphatically in a Democratic district, but if there had been any sign of weakness, if Gabe Amo wins this like 55-45, you can bet national people would be pointing to Rhode Island and saying, look, he tied himself to Biden and it dragged him down in a Democratic district. So they were very happy to see there was no sign of weakness from him being associated with the Biden White House.
And let's not forget that Gabe Amo, whenever he gets sworn in, and we can get to that into the second half, and the first vote he may have to take, yikes. But he's going to have to hop Joe right back on the campaign trail.
He's already running. He hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a continuation all the way to 2024. Everything he does now is going to be campaign related. The good fact for him is he won so big that it's going to be hard for a Democrat or even another Republican.
Scare them all off?
Exactly. They're going to be very concerned about running.
I mean, they would have to be raising money right now and putting their name out there to try and get ahead of what he's laid down in 2023.
What's the message? Staying in that room, who was beaming behind Gabe Amo as he gave his victory speech? Sabina Matos, who he just beat, looked sincerely happy for him. Sandra Cano went to who again lost him in the primary, went that night on primary night to sing. So there's a lot of good vibes from the other Democrats who might be in a position to challenge him. There's no sign of that. Aaron Regenberg just took a job with a public interest law firm. So anything could happen. Of course, Gabe Amo could maybe screw up or something, but if he doesn't, he's in pretty good shape.
He never offended the other Democrats in the primary, and that was key. So they all have a good affection for him at this point.
All right, it wasn't only Election Day in Rhode Island, it was Election Day elsewhere in the country. When we come back, we're going to look at those results and whether or not that's a preview to the 2024 presidential election. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers and this political roundtable looking at the results from election night. I'm Tim White alongside Ted Nesi, Joe Fleming, and Cara Cromwell. Before we pivot, as I said at the end of the first half, to national politics, I do want to sort of wrap up the first congressional race. And we talked a lot about the Republican Party and how difficult it is to run here. The result, 65% for Gabe Amo, 35% from Gary Leonard, the Republican. Let's hear from Gary Leonard. This was election night after he conceded in that race.
I promise you, I am not exiting stage left. I came back to Rhode Island when I could choose 49 other states to retire in when I left the Marine Corps. My ancestors came here 13 generations ago. I want to make sure that 13 generations from now, that this is the greatest state in the United States. So God bless every single one of you, and thank you for being here tonight.
Republican Gary Leonard in his concession speech. I should note that video was taken at a cafe in Jamestown, so the lighting was a little funky there, but that's why it looked that way. Look, classy guy, clearly the debate, they had clear differences in the debate, but it wasn't sort of this caustic fight. Do you think there's a political future, Joe, for Gary Leonard? He's now run, he's been a candidate in a big campaign, a congressional race. Could that translate to a run for lieutenant governor? Might be tough for a lawmaker who lives in Jamestown, traditionally blue.
Yeah,
right?
yep.
But is there a political future for Gary?
It is a possibility. I mean, he presented himself well during the campaign. The question is, does he go for like lieutenant governor, one of the lower offices, not the top offices, where it's going to cost less money to win? The other option is simply you go something even smaller. You go for state senator or state rep to try to get in there, build your name up, so you could bounce up to a higher office. We've seen that many times in Rhode Island.
I'll just add that I think one of the problems with the Republican Party over the years is they have a good candidate and they push them up to the highest office that's currently available. And they need to build their bench.
If you will.
They need to build their bench. They need more state reps and state senators, town councils, et cetera. That way people can develop that base of support to move up.
And I've heard over the years the Republicans say exactly that. We're going to get the local people elected and work our way up. But it just seems to never happen.
And by the way, just going back again, we talked about the last open CD1 race when John Laughlin ran. John had been a state rep. He knew grassroots politics, and I think those skills also, Gary Leonard was learning how to be a candidate on the fly with the spotlight of a congressional race on it. I mean, that's, our debate. Frankly, a more seasoned candidate might be a little more nimble at tap dancing around the Trump stuff. But he hadn't been practicing it because it's not what he's been doing.
So, Ted, let's stick with you. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the other local elections we had. Let's go over the border into Massachusetts. There were some key mayoral races there. Break it down for us.
Well, all four cities had their mayoral races. Attleboro's not even on here because their new mayor didn't even get an opponent. She was only elected in February. You see there, the top row in Fall River, New Bedford, and Taunton, mayors Coogan, Mitchell, and O'Connell all re-elected over their challengers. You see at the bottom. Very similar results, too, which I found interesting. Mitchell got 64% in New Bedford against Tyson Moultrie, who didn't run a big campaign. Coogan and Sutter, though. Coogan, 61, Sutter, 39, and then in Taunton, about the same, 59 for O'Connell, 41 for Carrera. So just no sign of incumbent backlash in southeastern Mass. All of them doing about a 60-40, 65-35 split. So all three of those mayors at the moment at least seem to have quite a strong base of support in their cities.
Joe, if this were, 5-6 years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, we'd also be talking about the mayoral race in Central Falls.
Central Falls, Woonsocket, they all went to even years now because the turnout was so low.
Mm-hmm. And you have done reporting on this. I mean, let me just be master of the obvious. If New Bedford, if Taunton, Attleboro, Fall River switched to even-yeared elections, turnout would be higher.
Oh, absolutely. No question. That'd be like 50% of the vote out.
Yeah.
I mean, this time it was just minuscule.
Yeah, exactly. There's just not a lot of interest in voting in these municipal elections anymore, which is good but it'll be interesting to see when one of them. I mean, Mitchell's now going to have been in office for 15 years in New Bedford when he finishes.
Is that right?
When he finishes the new term he just won. So maybe 16 actually. So how long does he stay? Does he, if the congressional seat Bill Keating holds out in New Bedford and Cape Cod ever opens up, does Mitchell go for that, and that opens things up? So there's some stuff to watch out there.
Yeah, and I think in the debate, didn't Mayor Coogan say he was open to moving to even-numbered years? I have to go back.
Yes, he did.
All
Yep.
right. Well, we'll see if that happens. All right, let's zoom out to national politics. Democrats fared well, not just in Rhode Island. The Democratic governor, incumbent, I should say, in Red Kentucky was reelected. The legislature in Virginia.
By the way, his former campaign manager, Eric Hires, who ran Gina Raimondo and David Cicilline's campaigns.
That's right. I saw your tweet on that. The legislature in Virginia flipped from Republican-controlled to Democratic-controlled. And in Ohio, voters approved an amendment to the Constitution preserving abortion rights in the post-Roe era. Is this a 2024 preview, you think, Cara?
I think it could be. I mean, polls have shown that the president is a bit underwater in battleground states. We've discussed that. But I do think going back to, are these leaders we want to elect that represent, whether it's kindness or moving things forward? And I do think there's a split that people are seeing across the country.
Let's bring up those polls. So battleground states, we're looking at Nevada, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Arizona, Michigan, Georgia. Of those, in a New York Times poll that tested both Donald Trump and Joe Biden is winning only Wisconsin, and I think it was only by 2 points or something like that. Joe, this is less about Donald Trump increasing his numbers and more about Joe Biden just losing support.
He's losing support among key groups. For example, black voters, young voters. The only good thing is the election's a year out. And as we always say, a poll's nothing more than a snapshot of when it's taken. Those are like two groups that they can work on for the next year and get those people back. For example, Gabe Amo, sending him out to places over the next year is very popular now. The president has to bring those groups back in. If he can't bring those groups back in, he's not going to win the election. Plus, I think when the Republicans have their nominee, which looks like Donald Trump, things may change quite a bit when the voters start looking at who are the two candidates. I may have questions about Joe Biden's age. I may have questions about Donald Trump's ability to run the government in an orderly fashion. So that's what it's going to come down to in the end, I believe.
And the New York Times had their poll last weekend sent like shock waves through the Biden campaign with all those battleground states.
I would think.
But they did an interesting follow-up. They interviewed some of the voters they had polled in these swing states who are maybe flipping back to Trump from Biden at the moment, who said, well, if Trump's convicted in any of these cases, I can't vote for him anymore. Which actually surprised me a little because I sort of thought the harm to Trump from these cases was baked in the cake already by getting indicted. But if there's you don't need that many voters, say it's 4 or 5% of voters who say, I can vote for a guy who's fighting and says he's innocent, but once he's convicted, I can't vote for him. That's a big gamble the Republican Party might be taking to nominate Trump not knowing how these cases are going to end.
And there's a whole primary process ahead of us. He said it's a lifetime away, right? I think when voters see Nikki Haley on the stage with Donald Trump, they are going to see a real contrast.
A lot of good buzz from her debate performance just last night, actually.
I'm sorry, when are we going to see them on stage together?
I mean, presumably.
Well, not Trump. He won't do it.
I don't think we will. That's the point.
I think you might. I think you might if it gets down to say.
Do you really? Why would Donald Trump ever debate? Why?
If you get down to two candidates,
I think he has to show up.
He has to show up at some point.
You do? Oh,
I don't think so.
I
totally disagree with that.
This is going to be an exciting Newsmakers.
Yeah, well, we're going to play this tape back in
arm
March.
wrestling edition. Yes.
If the polls start showing the race tightening up because there's only say two Republicans running, then he'll show up probably.
Now, I will say, people now talking about Nikki Haley as the great hope of the non-Trump Republicans. Well, we saw what happened with Ron DeSantis. He made his own mistakes, but Donald Trump dropped bomb after bomb on him. If Nikki Haley gains strength, Trump's going to drop bomb after bomb on Nikki Haley. Can she withstand that? I've just seen over and over Republicans who everyone talks up. As soon as Trump focuses in on them and goes after them, they lose altitude. So I'm not saying Nikki Haley...
It's going to be more of a challenge for him since he's said so many good things about her when she worked for him.
And he would never change position.
That's never stopped him before.
Well, we can't predict any of this. I do think he will appear on a debate stage at some point.
A couple minutes left, but just wrap up this conversation. Look, Democrats did real well in the midterm election. They were able to hold on to the Senate. It's very narrow for Republicans in the House, and a lot of that was the post-Roe abortion playbook that resonated with voters. We saw it again here in the special election. I have doubts that sort of playbook will work in the presidential election. First of all, a wider electorate, more people voting. You had a smaller turnout then, and we're seeing more and more states make it less of an issue.
I don't know. Maybe, but I think pundits have repeatedly suggested this next cycle is when the backlash to Dobbs would fade, and there has been zero sign of that. So I think this is an extremely potent issue. I just think we can't. For people, Newsmakers viewers are very plugged into politics, as I think the panel is. I don't
Well,
think
I hope
many
so.
of us
We invited them.
I think it's hard for us all to understand how many voters thought any talk of Roe ever going away was scare tactics, was just talk. And the shock to people who only pay a bit of attention to politics that something they thought was a constitutional right could go away. I think that's hits voters bigger than maybe we even understood.
All right, we only have 45 seconds left, so I just, if you could do this in that time, we'll go back to the City 1 race. When do we think Congressman-elect Gabe Amo will be sworn in, and will it be in time for the big vote on November 17th? 30 seconds.
Next week is the expectation. The Democrats want his vote there. I think Hakeem Jeffries is pushing to get him in there. There's a few procedural steps certifying the election again, but I'd be very surprised if he's not in place by November 17th, 18th when those votes are being taken.
And he's already made it clear. He's going to vote to keep the government open. No surprise
he said that on 12 News at 4 with Kim the other day.
Joe Fleming, Cara Cromwell, Ted Nesi, thanks so much for joining us. If you missed any of it, it's on WPRI.com. I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.